don't understand any compensating controls. They don't understand any business logic, whether it be the network or any application, right? So these scanners gives you the result as if everything is open and no security controls are in place, right? So you get that information, and they provide you a lot of good information about your target. So, and then once you get these results, then your creativity should kick in. You spend some time, you do some manual testing, you try to get into the application or the network, whatever your target may be, and go from there. So definitely relying on network scanner, vulnerability scanner, and calling yourself a penetration tester or whatever the case may be is not the right way to go about things.
But if I could add something to here, the Recon frameworks are, what we are using right now might be R engine or Recon FTW or any other Osmodos or any other tools. Those frameworks, those are really helpful for if you're like using any other targets, if you're writing on the big targets. The Recon frameworks are really good.
Yes,
definitely. But like what you also said is that they don't give complete results, and I really like that because. True. It's like, hey, there is a cross-site scripting in here, and then you check it out, but you still have to exploit it yourself or something like that.
Yes.
It's like, to a degree, because Burp Suite, for example, it also often gives a lot of false positives. That's something that's also a thing with scanners, and it's something we have to be very careful about. Like, I've seen pen testers who take a scanner's result and will actually report that result. And I'm like, no, that's not the way to go.
Sure, but with Nuclear, you can write your own custom templates, and this is something which has not been in like previous. If you go way back in previous, like 2014 or something, when we started using hacking or using tools, we wasn't having this many recon tools as of now. We used to rely completely on manual pen testing and low hanging fruit mostly.
Yeah, and I think it's not worthwhile for anybody's time to, for example, if somebody hires me to do penetration testing or vulnerability assessment for their network or application, and I run these automated tools, maybe unauthenticated scan, not even authenticated scans, and slap them with a report that they can run by themselves. I mean, if they have the tool, they can point the tool towards their target and scan it and get the report. It does not provide any value, right? The real value comes in when you run these tools, you triage the results, and if it's a penetration testing, you try to exploit the system and see what else you can do, and if you can get into the system and get to the crown jewels. That's where the real value is.
I totally agree. Sorry?
Yeah, so that's how I see. I mean, these are just vulnerability scanners, automated scanners are just one small part of what we do as pen testers or red teamers.
Definitely.
That's true. I completely agree with you. At the same time, the vulnerability scanners have the pros and cons, absolutely. But we cannot rely on them.
Yeah, but it's also, to me, it's also some of these tools, they're not easy to run. If I think about Nox, for example, that's a cross-site scripting scanner, you can actually install a browser extension, and as you test, it's automatically going to test for cross-site scripting. But the real strength in that tool lies in finding the hidden parameters and then feeding that to the tool so it can test on that parameter specifically. And I think a lot of these tools have some degree of configuration to them as well. But that brings up a good point as developers bring in security to their CI/CD pipelines. They can rely to a degree on automated scanners, and I think they do need pen testers still, of course. But you can't have a pen tester every single release because it's bi-weekly these days with Agile and stuff. It would just cost too much. So I do.
Yeah, you brought up a good point on CI/CD pipeline automation. So that's what I work with my clients a lot on this aspect. And what we have seen is that many of the organizations with very mature software security groups inside the organization still do not have integrated security into their CI/CD pipeline. Security for them is still an outside function that they have to go out and request for that function to scan those applications that they're developing. And that's where, we are focusing more on what we call shifting left in the CI/CD pipeline, where, from the developer's workstation, you integrate tools such as SonarQube or something like that, where as and when developers are writing the code in IDE, best practices get implemented and developers are notified of what they are doing wrong when they're writing the code from security point of view. And then, you do SAST, you do DAST, and towards the end of the pipeline, you do pen testing. So that's what, we are, working with a lot of our clients to actually go take that route rather than, having security towards the end. And it's more expensive when you're doing it towards the end of the pipeline.
As a QA engineer, I can only cheer that on because we're always talking about the shift left. The sooner you can find a bug, the less it costs to fix you, because simply fixing a line or two of code, that will not result in a huge cost. But if you have to go through the whole development pipeline again, where you deploy it on development, then you have to test it again, then you have to put it on staging before you put it on production, that's going to cost you a lot of money. But what a lot of people seem to be forgetting is the system requirements. Usually that's where it starts for me. If the system requirements are not good, well, then you have a big problem. And it's hard to get that correct. I agree to a degree, but that's only because companies have chosen not to take security analysts in their software design processes. It's like there's only analysts, and that's not a problem because being an analyst is an extremely difficult job, but there should be at least a security analyst reviewing that stuff. And that's where scanners can't help, of course, because good luck trying to get a scanner to review acceptance criteria. But to other degrees, and I think people can make it very simple, because of course SonarQube is a great thing, but it can be just a simple NICTO scan on your website that can prevent a lot of damages already. And I'm so baffled by the fact that people seem to be reluctant to implement that stuff. It doesn't always have to cost money though, and this is a point I want to bring up as well. The free stuff isn't always great. I tried OpenVAS, that thing crashes on me every freaking 5 minutes and I don't know why. So definitely something.
Happens with me too.
Okay, so I'm not alone.
Zap. Zap proxy is pretty good, and that's what we have integrated with a lot of our clients' CI/CD pipeline, where they can run Zap and automate it as code is moving through the pipeline. There are gates. We call it gates. And the code gets scanned dynamically and then moved to the next phase of development. So Zap can be a good tool if you are interested in looking into that.
I love Zap. Zap is a really great tool. But the problem with Zap that I've had is that it misses a lot of the vulnerabilities that I intentionally program in my labs. And I'm like, you should have had this Zap. Come on, this is not that hard. But yeah, all of the scanners have that issue. The only scanner where I haven't found that issue yet is in the scanners where I can feed information to the developers, like, hey guys, this issue wasn't picked up. Can you include this as well? And that's something that's really cool, by the way. They're like the Neural Legion tool. I've had a little small influence on it as well, I think. And for other tools, I've talked to developers as well, like, hey, this is missing, like Nox, for example, built by Brute Logic. Some of the cross-site scripting labs weren't picked up. But that's how, like, I love that these tool developers are so open to those concepts, because I've tried to contact OpenVAS, and, well, OpenVAS is open, of course, I mean Nessus. I've tried to contact those guys, like, hey, this thing wasn't picked up, but my emails didn't get answered. Nothing. That, I think security scanners, Nessus is quite popular, of course. Everybody's heard of it, but like you say, OWASP Zap is definitely a great one. I've also used Burp Suite Pro, but that gives me a lot of false positives. What I really like is tools that actually execute a proof of concept, that don't just say, hey, here's a vulnerability. And sometimes, like, I think Zap is doesn't do that, right? Zap is just I mean, it finds the vulnerabilities, but it doesn't
Yes.
confirm them.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It does not provide you proof of concept, but still, it does provide you quite a bit of useful information that definitely you can use in your pipeline and
Definitely.
improve the security. So, you being a quality assurance quality person that you mentioned, so do you do just functional testing, or do you do any non-functional testing in your QA process?
I try to keep every single software quality attribute in mind. So my specialization is in performance testing, where I do mostly JMeter because it's free. But I got a certificate in Neoload, so I could teach in that one as well. That's a great tool. I love Neoload, but I haven't been able to use it in years because it's expensive. That's so I think that of course other software quality characteristics should be taken into account as well. And what I'm mostly worried about is that it's kind of security is kind of always put on the last place. Have you guys noticed that as well? It's like, oh, first we're gonna do functional, then we're gonna do performance, then we're gonna do UI slash UX, then we're gonna think about pen testing maybe. At least that's for some
That's the
companies.
story. That's the story everywhere. I mean, it is not
Completely
one off.
agree on this. That's
It is
everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah. So, one thing that we try to, the way we try to address this with our clients is taking risk-based approach. Obviously, we have large clients, and some of them have 8,000, 10,000 applications in their organizations. So you cannot perform all of these security functions on all of these applications all the time because it's expensive, and security is an expense to business. It is not producing anything for them, right? So that's why security is kind of at the bottom. And it only comes up if something happens, if they get hacked and they make to the front page of a New York Post or Washington Post, right? But what we do is, we always advise to take a risk-based approach, identify high-risk applications, and at least focus their security efforts towards those applications. Not only secure their CI/CD pipeline by implementing technical tools and automation, but also perform architectural risk analysis, perform threat modeling on those applications. That provides you a lot of information. Have architects do that, and then verify that by using tools that what you have identified during threat modeling, during architectural risk analysis, you can verify through SAST, you can verify through DAST. So these are the things that we have discussed with our clients quite a bit, and it's always risk-based approach.
I love risk based. That's also what we do when we determine well, at least that's what I prefer to do when I do testing. But the thing is, like, for me, it's also like what people don't take into account is the internal employees. They're such a great risk. Like today I was hacking on a bug bounty program and they said that internal broken access control within one tenant was not in scope. And I was like, yeah, but like it's like I'm an ethical hacker. I worked at some of the biggest companies in Belgium. So it's not that hard to get in if you really want to. So yeah, I'm not agreeing to that because personal information was involved. And it's everywhere, it's the same thing. Like people are always the weakest link. We used to run these tools, which would, it's also kind of a vulnerability scanner. It would send a phishing mail to the employees every single, well, not predictable, but it would do it like in a time frame of 3 to 4 months, just enough time for them to forget the previous one. And every single time we had like a 60 or 70% open rate. and like a 40% click rate on that phishing mail. And I was like, guys, come on. We do this every single quarter. So yeah, that's like, for me, that's the things that I wanted to say on vulnerability scanning. Vulnerability scanners are just another pen tester for me. Well, I say just, but they're like another pen tester for me. It's maybe even a team of pen testers because I use so many. And those tools, of course, they cost a lot of money, but as a pen tester, they go into the price of so it's not that expensive because you calculate it in. But I really appreciate that those things exist. Even if they don't find everything, they do still find stuff that I might have missed. Because I'm still human, I don't test every single thing for every single parameter either. I try to do my methodology as best as I can, but I'm sure I'm gonna miss stuff. That's just my nature, especially for me. I'm kind of sloppy when it comes to these things. I miss a lot of things in the sense that some things seem extremely obvious because you know that they are there. But like, there was this recently, I was hacking a target, and you could set a date from start to finish, and you could only take 1 hour time slots. I know I've told this story before, but that was an extremely obvious parameter. Start date and end date. Okay, I can just change that and book the whole calendar for a year. It's these obvious things that are in front of our faces, staring at us the whole time, that are best hidden. I don't know if you guys know this expression, but hide in plain sight. That's something that a lot of these issues do, in my opinion. What I also wanted to talk about is if bug bounties are exploitative, because I've seen different opinions. I've seen people say bug bounties are exploitative. They're just taking advantage of us. We're doing free work. But my opinion is different. I see bug bounties as a practice platform, and I was just wondering what your guys' opinion was on that, if you have any, of course.
I mean, if they are serving a purpose of, finding those issues that, as you mentioned, that if you're working for an organization, your responsibility is to do pen tests, your responsibility is to find issues. And obviously, as humans, we cannot do everything, right? But then there are other set of eyes that are looking at those things. And then if there's an official bug bounty program exists for a company, then whoever found that issue is well compensated. So I think it's a win-win situation, in my opinion. Only thing what I see is if bug bounties don't get turned into bug bounties program. And there was a thread that I was seeing on Twitter from one of the guy who said that he actually Kreb, I think it was Kreb on security, who has written about bug bounties rather than bug bounties, where these bug bounties are kind of exploiting the companies that, hey, we have found the vulnerabilities, pay us, or we're going to release this vulnerability. So that's something that I see a downside of bug bounties converting into bug bounties.
I've actually been doing free bug bounties. Like this entire time, I was never really gotten paid for any bounties. I've just been doing VDPs, and I've actually found it to really help my methodology, really strengthened it. And one time I actually reported a bug, and I got a job from it without even like expecting to pay or anything. So awesome. I think it's great way to practice. That's pretty much where most of my hacking knowledge came from.
For me, bug bounties is something to, it's a platform where, you get introduced to a lot of programs, practice your skills, gain knowledge, get into space of cybersecurity, meet people. And, it's completely different coming to for bug bounties to a pen tester. And I really enjoy the space of bug bounties.
Those are all some great points you guys made. I want to first touch on the point that bug bounties is something where you can do everything that you want. You don't have to stick to a methodology. That's what I really like about it as well. One day I can focus on business logic, and the next I can go completely the opposite route and go broad scope and start doing domain scans. It's my time. I do with it what I want.
Yes, you don't have a time limit of what you have to focus mostly. You can do anything or whatever you want to do.
Definitely.
That's what I like the most about in bug bounties. But when you're doing pen testing project, you get some time. When you're allocated with the project, you'll be given like some time from like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 1 week mostly. And there might be slight chances where a pen tester cannot go through all the functionalities, understanding the logic. That's where the business logic vulnerabilities comes in. Like when I found some quite business logic vulnerabilities, the application has been testing from a long time, quite long time. The client has been in our company, but even though when you're working with a big bug bounty company, when it's if the hackers reporting the bugs, I read the reports and I find it quite interesting. The way they understand the application and use the functionalities and abuse of functionalities. Trying to find a new vulnerability or they're abusing the business logic methodology.
Definitely interesting to read as well. My first experience from bug bounties came from pen testing reports that I read in my company internally. Bad idea, of course, because they reported everything, and in bug bounties that doesn't fly. But yeah, it was a good learning experience. Hello, Brandon. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you very much.
I'm a little late to the party, but I figured I'd just jump in and try to contribute. That I think the concept of the big bounty is really comes down to a fundamental question, especially in cybersecurity, but also in tech in general, is why are you doing this? Meaning, what are your motives for finding bugs for cybersecurity? Is it if it's solely about money, then your options are going to be limited, and your reach is going to be limited. People don't want to work with somebody who isn't at least a little bit balanced, passionate about helping other people. I mean, isn't that the original spirit of the original hackers? It was about sort of the sense of adventure, but also, helping to protect certain systems as well as break them. And I don't know. I mean, I think there's more of an ethical discussion that could be had here that doesn't need to be had right now. But I think that is a big part of it. I mean, money. I think I was telling you that I had found a bug recently in a healthcare system, and it wasn't a company that had a bounty. It was a major health system, and it was a major bug, and I didn't hesitate. And I knew I wasn't going to get paid, but you're protecting people.
Definitely, that's definitely a great point, and I just like to break shit as well. And the thing is, like yesterday, I was talking to somebody who got into this field, and he did some extreme sports as well. And he was like, every time I get a flag, the rush is as great as when I do a base jump. And I'm like, yep, that's it, definitely. When I went for my OOCP, I rode that dopamine wave hard. I kept my 10-pointer and my buffer overflow machines until the very last, just so I could have something that I knew I wasn't going to fail on. At least that I was pretty confident that I was going to fail on. Because the buffer overflow is just following steps, and 10-pointer shouldn't have been that hard. It wasn't, thankfully. And those things really kept me up. What I also heard, and something that's very interesting to me, is your motives. Not only for bug bounties, but hacking in general, indeed. Like, why did you guys get into this field? For me, it's simple. Like I said, I just like to break shit. I'm really somebody who is... From a childhood, I was decompiling systems. Like, I had this toy car, remote controlled, and I was pulling it apart, seeing how it works, and just trying to explore how everything's built up. That was my motivation, and then of course the helping people is also a big part of it, but it's more of a helping the world become more secure for a bit of a selfish reason as well, to be honest. I'm gonna be really honest, it's a bit selfish as well. I want my kid to grow up in a safer world. And it it helps the world, of course, but it mostly, I just really want my kid to be safe. And what I've been seeing is not going the correct way because, for example, I've been using a MacBook for quite a while, and I have an iMac as well. I've seen the evolution of iOS go from, oh, this is a really cool, well stitched together system, to, hey, bugs are starting to appear. You're mixing different, for example, just spinners, the stupid spinners of the loading signal. They're different in different locations. That irks me. I know that shouldn't irk me, but those things all introduce vulnerabilities because every as a QA engineer, maybe it's kind of my curse, but every single vulnerability is something that I will dig into. Sorry, every single defect, I should say. It doesn't have to be a vulnerability, but it might be, and that's what I'm initially looking for, is those defects in the software. I'm not really looking for vulnerabilities that much. I might start out just hacking, just doing my thing, very basically inserting some cross-site scripting and tag factors here and there, trying SQL injection, trying CSTI, SSTI, very basic stuff. And then when I've explored it all, then I'll move on to the business logic, trying to see if I can break stuff, broken access control, IDORs. Those are the things I really enjoy doing, broken access control and IDORs. So when I was doing bug bounties and I looked at that program and they said, we don't accept broken access control internally, I made it 360 and I walked away. Woo, not gonna happen. Like, for me, what I really like in bug bounty targets are like business to business applications because they usually contain a lot more functionality. They allow you to create users of different levels, of different privileges. And I don't really like broad scope in general. That's not my cup of tea. Hello, Mr. Stex. You shouldn't. He's not hearing me right now, I think. And we're connected. Hello, Mr. Stex. How are you doing? Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, by the way.
Hi.
Hello. Everything okay, my friend?
Yes, everything is okay.
Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nothing.
Okay. If you want to add or ask anything, feel free to go ahead. Like, do you guys have any favorite bug bounty targets that you always go for? Is it like a newspaper, web shop, anything? I guess not.
No, I think I just want to add what you mentioned before about cybersecurity and what we do. It's a very mission-based career in cybersecurity, right? It's not like you are managing a network or developing a program. You know, what we do basically has an impact, whichever industry you are in. So, when I can give you an example, I was running a SCADA practice at my last job, industrial control system. And when you're looking at the security of industrial control system, that has and if it's those things are not properly set up and if they get compromised, those have real physical impact on the lives of people. So that's something that I really enjoy about my field in cybersecurity. And I work in transportation. I've looked at oil and gas. I looked at water distribution facilities and looking at their security. And I've seen firsthand what could happen if a malicious actor get into those networks and those systems, and how it can impact on the lives of people. So this is the great thing about cybersecurity, that you are actually making world a safer place.
And when you're pen testing, are you ever scared that you break something? Because I'm constantly on my toes, like, oh no, don't wanna break it.
Yeah, So I came up with the technique. I mean, it's not my technique. I'm sure somebody else has done it. So with industrial control systems, what the problem that I've seen with them is that they are mostly using older technologies, and that technology is like very sensitive. If you point a scanner, even an Nmap scanner towards them, they have tendency to break down really quick, right? So what I did. With some of my clients' approach that I take, and it worked pretty good, is basically capture the traffic that is flowing on that industrial control system network, right? I plugged it into a core switch, capture as much as traffic as I could, and then take that traffic to analyze it offline, replay that TCP traffic through various tools, packet sniffers, other type of tools, packet analyzers, packet reconstruction tools, and see what is being flown through that traffic. And you'll be surprised, we found default configuration, like default passwords, information going in clear text on those things, misconfigurations. Some of the systems that were, Linux-based systems, we use tools from Red Hat, where you can actually install that tool locally on machine and run locally to get configuration information out of those systems and see where they are lacking in terms of their security. So it's a very passive approach that we took in testing those environments without breaking them. So that's an approach that works really well for us.
I really like that approach. It's kind of the same approach the police take when they want to investigate a hard drive. They copy it over. They don't investigate the hard drive itself.
Right, and that's a part of forensics work, and that's something I've also done, and especially in lottery industry, where we investigated lottery frauds for random number generations. We actually, I think it's an open case now. If you want to look it up, it's the Wisconsin lottery, where the guy he was inside, as you were talking about insider threat. So the lottery security officer somehow injected DLL in RNG, where over the course of 5 years, it was generating number which he knows where those tickets are going to sell within his state or outside his state. And then he was employing his lawyer and his relatives to buy those tickets from those specific stores or gas stations. And then he made about $15 million slowly over the course of 5 years. So, and then we were able to actually take image of the disk, brought it back. I had a good team of forensics investigators who actually looked into that, reverse engineered the DLL, and found that on certain days, it generates numbers and a specific series that goes to a specific stores, because it is a whole chain of how that lottery air tickets are printed and distributed. So he understands that because he was an insider. So that guy now is behind bars. So these things, do happen a lot.
Definitely. It's so dangerous that people... It's also an OWASP top 10 issue, I think, that people use untrusted libraries or extensions. And it baffles me often how unprotected they really are. Like, just pulling in public repositories and stuff like that. I'm not against it, of course, you need that stuff, but at least verify it a little bit. And especially when it comes to like this, risk-based is very important here. You need to understand that this is very sensitive, and it's not just lottery that you say. Lottery is also important, of course, but I've worked at a bank where that was possible. We stopped it in time, of course, but still, like at a...
If I could add to this, how do we mitigate internal threats? I just want to know how can we, from the outside perspective, we are trying to protect the application, doing other stuff, but how to mitigate the internal threats? Can you elaborate on this, anyone, guys?
That's a great question. So for me, real quick, what I would do, or what I do, is I divide properly into a security model. I make a proper threat model, and then I divide into security levels that people can have clearance levels where we can access certain files, where everything is properly secured and managed by the security team. But that's something that's expensive. Most companies don't want to pay for that. Maybe Rehan has also something to add about that.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and that's what we all try to do as a security professional, right? How we can mitigate the risk. You cannot eliminate the risk 100%. You can always minimize it, right, to an acceptable level. So start from the beginning when you're designing a system. Incorporate security right from the get-go. Engage security team right from the beginning. Take a risk-based approach, perform threat modeling on your systems, whether applications or whatnot. And then from application point of view, insider threat, what we have done is that for SAST analysis, I mean, a lot of people use SAST tools right outside the box with default configurations, right? Either check marks or whatever the case may be. And they just point the tool and scan the application, whether it be OWASP top 10 or SANS top 25. However, it is very important to tailor those tools to meet your organizational requirements. And that's something that I've seen organizations are not doing. They are going with default configurations, and that's about it. So it takes time, it takes some effort. It's a little bit time-consuming thing, but it pays at the end. Go ahead, Jax, you were saying something?
Yeah, sorry for interrupting you, man. I just want to add something to the things that you're saying. And by the way, I'm not trying to defend any company, okay? But as you said, many companies are just have instruction or instructing their people to just run the scanners in the default tools because they are scared about how harmful could be. But sorry, specifically for SaaS, they are running, for example, checkmarks, and all those SaaS tools has not a lot of configuration options. They just have like some. Then if they are relaying just in the results of that, for sure, as you're saying, it's not going to be completely mitigated. That's why it comes worthy the dust stage. But it's sort of I don't know. There are a lot of skilled people, but that it's outside in the market. But the companies they don't want to pay for skilled people. They rather to hire 2 or 3 people instead of one that it's of course expensive. They rather to hire like two people who is performing maybe a medium job or they are not well seasoned, but it's acceptable for them. So there is like a vicious circle, like an infinity loop.
It does. And I think accountability makes a big difference. It depends upon which industry you are in, right? I mean, over here in US, financial industry, healthcare industry, they have to abide by a lot of compliance requirements. And if they do not meet that, then they have to face fines at times that those could be heavy. So I think if those audit requirements, compliant requirements are in place, and there are hefty fines if they do not comply with those requirements, or if the system got hacked, or the PII data that they are responsible for gets stolen, then and if they understand the consequences, what happens if their system get compromised, then I have seen organizations making effort to invest and to customize and to develop proper security programs in their organizations to mitigate those risks.
All right, thanks for the info, guys. If I could add something which was mentioned by thexssrat, previously when we spoke about business logic vulnerabilities, for an instant, let's say there's a possibility, even though we have a secure co-writing or the threat which we're getting from outside is playing race, but at the same time, if the application doesn't have a proper logic, if the code doesn't have a proper logic, sometimes it raises for the business logic vulnerabilities. Can you comment on this, thexssrat?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Please? That last part cut out for me.
Even though if you're having the secure code review, sometimes if the application doesn't have the proper logic, it raises for the business logic vulnerability.
Can you explain a few of these on how to mitigate those business logic vulnerabilities?
Definitely, those business logic vulnerabilities are best tackled by a tester who knows how they work, and a QA engineer doesn't have to know that a business logic vulnerability can produce a vulnerability in and of itself. He just has to know how to look for business logic errors. And if you pick out the business logic errors, you pick those things out as well. But I'm very simplifying it, I'm extremely oversimplifying it for the sake of if you really want to get rid of all business logic errors, you just have to start using pen and paper again. That's as simple as that. There's no way to get rid of all of them because as good as humans are at predicting things in the near future, they're really bad at predicting how things are going to turn out in a few months. It's just our nature. And I wanted to ask you guys, like, have any of you guys ever said flat out no to a pen test? It happened to me before. There was a crypto website that was, in my opinion, pretty clearly a pump and dump scheme. So I didn't bite. I was like, nope, not gonna happen, even though they offered me like double my rate. But did any of you guys ever say like flat out, nope, not gonna pen test this? Or bug bounties even. Maybe you've seen a target where you're like, nope, not even gonna touch this thing.
Well, for the bug bounties, the application, based upon the criteria or the bounty offering maybe, and the application scope. Sometimes I believe recently there was a trending picture of their for a program. They were for the critical. They were giving somewhere like $100. I saw the screenshot. I'm not sure of that, but for the bug bounty programs, if I am basically goes on the reward policies and the target, and that's it.
By the way, for you guys who are wondering, we've been saying SAST and DAST a lot. I forgot to explain. SAST is a static code analysis tool. DAST is when you run the application and test it. That's basically it. I know I'm oversimplifying things, but I think that should help you comprehend a little bit better. What I also wrote down here, and I don't know who said it anymore, but some of you guys were talking about VDP programs, vulnerability disclosure. Those are my favorite, to be honest, and I know it kind of sucks to see $0 or no bounty, but if you think of bounties like we talked about before, where it's a practice platform or a platform to perfect your skills, to do whatever you want on, then it's a totally different story because those VDPs, a lot of hackers are going to avoid them. If they see $0, they're going to run away, and the less hackers there are, the less competition there is for us. Though I have to say, you really don't have to be scared of competition. Like, people are so scared of, oh, other hackers have hacked that thing before me. Yeah, but boys, we're in bug bounties, not hacking. That's a different thing. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but bug bounties is not even remotely the same thing as hacking. Pen testing, if you're a pen tester, you have a methodology that you can follow to a degree, but if you're a bug bounty hunter, there's no point in following the exact same methodology everybody else follows.
Yeah, I agree on that. For bug bounty, it's not a marathon. It's always like how we come up on vulnerabilities, how we are thinking on a logical basis for finding a vulnerability.
Yeah, and it's like you said before, you have the time. You can do whatever you want. You have time, plenty of time. So just explore properly and hack that stuff.
Coming for the VDPs, VDP is a good start for for the young hackers who are coming into the bug bounty space, getting into the space and trying to practice their vulnerabilities. But do you think who's like an experienced guy who's been into bug bounties for a long time, working on VDPs is a good time to spend his time on those programs?
It depends on what your goal is. Goal setting is extremely important in this case because I've heard some people say, hey, I want to go full-time bug bounty hunting. What do I do? Well, vulnerability disclosure programs are going to be not a no-go because you still need them, but you can't exclusively focus on VDP anymore. I've also seen people say like, I just want to hack stuff, and that's where VDP can keep coming in handy, because like if you're looking at the bug bounty programs, if you're looking at the normal bug bounty programs, okay, you have maybe 10 to 1,000, maybe $5,000. But if you look at the really big programs, you're looking at not just harder things, but very hard things, which usually require some kind of physical thing as well. Like when you're hacking a bank, you often have to be a client at that bank. So I tend to I tend to focus on VDPs to get invites so I can focus on the more protected programs. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Those invites, they really matter in bug bounties, and
Yeah, invites and the reputation definitely matters.
yeah, and don't get blindsided either, because if you first get into bug bounties, you can see some CTFs. I'm not gonna name any names, by some bigger bug bounty platforms where you can win a invite if you have a flag. Well, don't be bamboozled by that. The invites you get are the programs that nobody wants to hack on.
That's true.
They're, they're not the greatest ones.
Yeah, man. Yeah, true.
But it's if you really want to get into bug bounties, VDP is definitely a way to go. And I've also seen a lot of people complain about lost money. Like, hey, I reported a bug, you didn't give me anything. They publicly go onto Twitter. Do you have any?
Yeah, publicly disclosing the vulnerabilities. That's not the legal way of ethical hackers to do that. But sometimes people get frustrated, and yeah,
Yeah, it gets nasty.
that's true.
And it's every story has two sides, of course, and
Yeah,
everybody is telling their side of the story, but when push comes to shove, it's the bug bounty platforms slash bug bounty targets that determine who gets the money. Because that's also important. As an ethical hacker, you learn that everything is important. You're going to investigate every single thing, and everything's important, but that's not true to companies. Budgets are limited. There is no unlimited budget for any company, so really.
yeah, that's true. I found this vulnerability recently. It was an auth taker, pre-auth taker, and it was like a high vulnerability. But even though the counter rate has medium and they send me somewhere like $500, so it happens. But somehow you're getting the time to focus and learning something. So that's what keeps me motivating to do more and more into bug bounties.
Definitely, and when you're as awesome as we are and you report 1,000 bugs, of course, one's gonna be bad. I'm just kidding, of course, I don't have that big of an ego. It's quite big, but not that big yet. I also found it interesting that you guys talked about custom nucleate templates when we talked about vulnerability scanners. Because when I look at a bug bounty target, I often see no automated scanners allowed. And then I sometimes see automated requests, 5 requests per second maximum. And I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, scope page, update.
Yeah, and
And-
sometimes the targets allow you to use a custom headers of your username. So and that's the thing.
Yeah. And all of those custom templates, all of those vulnerability scanners and bug bounties, I love them. Don't get me wrong, but do use your own custom templates and don't just go and you're running the default templates, because if you run the same stuff as everybody else does with the same
We're gonna
scanner,
find nothing if you're gonna.
exactly, you're never gonna find anything, or a duplicate. Maybe
But
duplicate.
I write my templates on my own, right? And looking at the target and looking up the target, and I try to define the versions, and then I try to write my own custom templates.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that's very important to me as well. And just going to Google and Googling that stuff. Like, if I have a target in front of me, I'm gonna Google a manual and I'm gonna Google if there's API documentation and just everything that I can look at. I'm even gonna look at the profiles of the employees to see if there's a big release coming up or anything that I need to know about.
Yeah, and most of the people ignore GitHub and Google Docs and stuff. And GitHub repositories is a place where like there are a lot of information being disclosed and way back URLs. Those are like really important things. Stuff people miss on doing that recon. Recon is
Yeah, but like,
mostly anything.
sorry to interrupt you there, but it's like people always stick to the same stuff that they know. It's
Yeah,
oh, everybody knows Nikto, never, not gonna look for anything else. Everybody knows Nuclei, not gonna look for everything else. Same for Burp Suite. You know what the names of these tools are, like Wayback Machine, that's an archive, an internet archive. You can Google for other internet archives. And that's what being bug bounty hunter is about for me. It's like doing that extra mile and doing things that other people didn't think about doing. Like, oh, gonna Google some other archiving machines. It frustrates me that everybody uses the same tools, and I get that they're just good, but sometimes, like, Wayback Machines, Wayback URLs, great tool, nothing to complain about. But there's other things as well.
I see people reporting cross-site scripting vulnerability, and they try to mention this like, just go to the particular URL and just type in JavaScript alert one, and you get a pop-up that success. And people don't even try to leverage of what you can do with as a cross-site scripting vulnerability. I see a lot of hackers who are coming into this field, and
Yeah, but the thing
they
is,
stick with.
can you blame them though? Because if you look up cross-site scripting right now, what you're gonna find is 99 tutorials with alert one.
Yeah, that's the shit, man. God.
Because every tutorial out there is aimed at companies and managers who need to know, oh, alert one is a pop-up and a vulnerability. Be careful.
Yeah.
But like, I get it to a degree, but I also want to ask you guys, if you do get a cross-site scripting, don't just stop at alert one. Try to steal a cookie, try to steal pager data. You can even, if nothing works, if nothing else works, you can even try to do dangling markup injection. There's so many things that you can try other than alert and and the prompt and stuff, So just try a little bit different things. That's I'd be very happy for that.
Yeah, I see young hackers and I recommend them to understand the logic of a particular vulnerability. I would suggest them to go deep dive into understanding a particular vulnerability or whatever they're focusing on.
Yeah, and the thing is also, of course, it's difficult to understand what the impact of of an issue is if you're first looking into it. Like cross-site scripting, if you really want to understand what the impact can be, you have to go pretty deep.
Yeah.
And the same is for, like, if I explain what a CSRF token is and that it shouldn't be missing and that the server should check it, then you still don't know why. What's happening? Why is that CSRF token existing? And that's where most of these tutorials could do a little bit better, in my opinion. But I'm not one to complain. They always told me, if you think you can do it better, just do it.
Yeah, man.
And I've also written down right here code reviews. I think code review tools are important, but if you like you said, if you just go to GitHub, there's so many repositories where they put passwords in the repository instead of in an environment variable or something like that, and it's just because developers don't really understand the impact of what they're doing at that moment. That's why I think it's also important to educate developers on what's happening.
Absolutely. Without developers, there are no hackers. Without developer making a mistake in their code. So, yeah, eventually every developer needs to understand the core mediums of security vulnerabilities, how they arose. They have to get educated on, the new threats which are being arose on the, on the places of the application. Whenever they're pushing a new code into the environment, they have to do a security audit of that.
Definitely. If I look back at the code I've written when I first came out of school, I cringe kind of because I know that if some serious attack would have happened, then I would have been screwed.
When I first designed a web HTML web page, it was full of cross-scripting vulnerabilities.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Cross-site scripting, SQL injection, oh, throw it in there, doesn't really matter. That's where building these labs really helps as well. I use it as practice because then you get to really know your programming application, where things could go wrong and stuff like that. But
Yeah, that's true.
it's like, it's also, I think it's also getting harder for developers to keep up with the developments in the different issue types, but also not. Like like the core of, we've talked about this as well, and I think a pirate brought this up previously. The core of the issues is still the same, and there's not that many new revolutionary issues being discovered.
Yep, that's true too.
When I heard that, when she said that, I was like, yeah, that's definitely true. And if you think about it, like a basic training for a developer for your whole company shouldn't cost that much, other than you're putting your whole developers into a training, one training for maybe a day or something like that. That would already improve security a lot. But it's like, uh, I don't know who said it anymore, but yeah, my memory is a total mess. Don't mind me.
That's why.
I brought up recently to, in my day job, work on a healthcare app or manage IT for such. But anyway, there's a larger development firm that's based locally, which I'll say in the vaguest terms possible. But they're well known and successful, and they a good group of programmers, I'd say. And I brought up, if they participate in any kind of coding security organizations. There's a lot of such things around. They had never even heard of such a thing as a bug bounty, nor did they have any comment on any kind of secure programming or education for their people or anything like that, which kind of honestly scared the shit out of me. I mean, they're known locally to work on a lot of very large enterprise applications and consulting. And I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect the reaction that I got, which was sort of just that they were just completely unaware of even the concept.
Recently, I was invited to speak at an event for a company, and they were very receptive of everything that I had to say when it came to ethical hacking, when it came to securing their code. And I showed them some issue types and how they could arise. And that was honestly a really good talk, and I really enjoyed that because I saw the developers and I knew that they had taken at least something from that talk. And I wish that more companies would do that, but I doubt they will. It's not something that's ingrained into culture yet. It's the defensive programming practices that people seem to forget. And of course, every single person coming fresh out of high school knows how to code. Heck, I could even teach my grandmother how to code if I really wanted to. But to really code at a company level, that's a whole different story. It's not like your home programming at all. If you're programming something for 10 users, that's different than when you're programming for it for 100,000 users, of course. And that's something that developers have seemed to forgotten these days. But there has been a shift towards better development as well, of course. I think it's like a cat and mouse game. Like, oh, the developers find something to fix an issue that the hackers found. Well, the hackers find a way around it, and the developers fix it again, and the hackers find a way around that. But it's slow to spread as well, because if I teach you how to code securely, you're gonna have to spread it, because I can't spread it to the whole world. And it's the same thing for all of this ethical hacking stuff. I hope you guys will just create a blog or something to show what you've learned so that the world can also profit from that stuff. And I know there's already a lot of stuff out there and a lot of things to read and blah blah blah, but there's always room for one more because you have different kind of people with different kind of tastes, and they will look at your article, and some will love it and some will hate it, but you will help some people, and that's what's important. As long as you don't tell completely lies in your articles, of course, like I don't know, XSS is a server side issue or something like that. But even then, it's like, yeah, people have 50 different resources. I'm sure they can figure it out as an ethical hacker. So the more the better, and the more choice the better. If you want to start a blog, if you want to say anything that you've learned, tweet it at me and I'll be happy to retweet it. Because I think it's important that I'm just a messenger and you guys are messengers as well. You guys are messengers of the security mindset. And the more of you that learn this, the more of you that will understand that the world is becoming an ever more dangerous place with IoT devices popping up everywhere, with cars being hacked. Of course, I know car security has come a long way as well, but ethical hacking has come a long way as well. So all of this thing, it's always going to be a cat and mouse game. The more of you that are there, the better. And I really appreciate every single one of you being here today. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything, but I don't have anything more to say. So if you do, feel free to speak up or add yourself as a requester. But maybe this was the last time we're hosting this on Twitter as well. I haven't decided yet, but I think Discord is also a good place to host because there at least I can do screen sharing. That's a shame that I can't do screen sharing here. Otherwise, we could do live classes in here. That would be interesting to see a live
That
cross-site.
would have been amazing to do.
Yeah, I know, right? Like a live cross-site scripting class in Twitter. That would be cool, but unfortunately, Twitter doesn't allow it yet. So it's probably
Yeah.
gonna be in my Discord. There, I can share my screen a little bit, and I try to make all of my classes interactive, so it's with exercises and all of that stuff that we do together. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I think I'm gonna organize a new live session soon, so be on the lookout for that on my Twitter account. I'll definitely announce that. I wish you all a good night, good day, good evening, whatever time it is at your place.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you everybody who has provided feedback. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. See you later, amazing hackers.